Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday night, and it is January 13th of 2022. And welcome to Guitar Town Hall with your host, David NESDALL, and my co-host, Ben Coombs. Ben, how you doing?
Doing well, David. Doing well. You know, it almost made it to the the freezing, or as I like to think it, the thawing mark today. We're just about there. So, a mild day in the Great White North. So happy to be here. Happy to be with you. Happy to be with these cool cats. Man, we've already got a crowd in the chat, and I'm seeing a theme in a lot of the screen names. Just saying, I'm just seeing a theme here, folks. 4 numbers. Well, 3 numbers. One of them twice. Just saying. More on that in a minute. And I want to welcome 2 very cool cats to the channel here. We got Mr. Chris Locke. He knows how to cut all the right shapes in the bodies. All of them. All of them. And then we got Donny Ward up here, which, great race car driver name, by the way. Donny Ward. Just saying. It is. That's my other passion. This guy, he can shape a neck. Just beautiful curves. Beautiful. Can I say sexy? I can say sexy. Sexy curves.
Yeah, I think you can. We're gonna talk about probably the most accurate body and neck that you can get for your homemade 5150 guitar replica build. Where we may show a neck or two. We don't have any 5150 bodies to show tonight, but we'll be able to see those in the near future. So very near, faster than you think.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, Ben, why don't we say hello to everyone in the chat real quick?
Yeah. So these folks have taken the time to say hello to us. So let's go ahead and I want to welcome. Let's see. Well, there's the one and only Rob Johnson. I assume Rob 5150 EVH himself. I see a guy wearing possibly a kimono. No, a gi. Yep, it's very small. Awesome. That's got to be Rob. Legend. Thomas Santiago, Leafy the Great. Hello. Welcome to the channel. New name in here. Leo Sofko, the lovely Desiree NESDALL in the chat. Magic Man, Charles 75N, Tim Thomas. Let's see here. Polly Walnuts, Terry 3Gs, our moderator and moderator to the stars. Let's see. Corey's Garden. He's here because he's got a day off tomorrow. Perfect. Awesome. Did we say hello to Dan of New Jersey? If not, just did. Stephen Rappel. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. Shell Gardner. Lots of new names just coming out right out of the woodwork. Loving this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for everyone, old and new, for joining us tonight. It's going
to Neil Daly. Never heard of him in the Van Halen sphere. Nope, not a bit. What's up, Neil? Great to see Neil in here. Matthew Stewart, Papa Blue, Chachki Hinohara. I'm trying. Chachki? Chachi. Hello. Welcome. Guitar Man 45, Charlie S, Mike Johnson. Let's see. Who are we getting pre-gamers in there? Oh, there's Newer FC Club, EBMM EVH. Yep. I can pretty much know where his loyalties are. Jeff Cornell. We'll just get on down the bottom where we got unbelievable.
Gotta say
Michael
one thing.
Tank, T. Ricky.
Shelly Gardner says Stephen Rapoli and I are big fans of Donny Ward, so you have a little fan club.
Nice. Jimmy 1647. Guitar Samurai's here. Awesome.
We have
more joining in, I'm sure. Wow, quite the crowd already.
53 people watching, 106 pairs of eyes. Well, 106 eyes, 53 pairs of eyes showing us, watching us at the moment. And, let's get into this.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, hey, Chris. Hey, Don. How you doing?
Good, Dave. How are you?
Excellent. Can't complain. All right. So I'm going to ask each of you this question first. First of all, Chris, we'll start with you. How did you get into guitar? How did you get into making guitar bodies, cutting necks and bodies? What made you start to do that?
Just like I don't know, anybody. You get the you want some cool gear, and you're like, well, I can't really afford it, so let's get some parts and let's try and put it together and see what happens. So I started off just like all my customers, buying from guys like me, and I'm like, hey, I like woodworking, so let's give this a shot. So instead of buying from guys like me, just started making it myself and just kind of went from there.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's excellent. So so what made you think into like doing this for a living? What did someone see something you made for yourself and say, hey, you should do this for a living? Is that how it started for you?
Yeah, kinda. Had my own parts guitars and got them in the hands of some guitar players, and they're like, hey, can you build me one? And that's just kind of where it went. Yeah. And it was all really before the Great Recession. So, the Great Recession hit, and the custom guitar builds just, that wasn't working anymore. So had to switch gears. It's like, well, let's start building parts. Let's start building bodies and necks. And it took a long, long time of just grinding it out to get my name out there and, get the public's trust on, this random guys just, pushing product. And now this is where we're at.
Yeah. What made you decide to hone in on the Van Halen replica guitars?
I had a friend in high school, and he was a pretty good guitar player, and that was the first time I heard Cathedral, and I was like, wow, this is something. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, oh, this is Van Halen. This is Eddie Van Halen. And I'm like, wow, this dude's something. So that sent me down the rabbit hole on listening to all the songs and then trying to learn how to play all the songs. And when the custom guitar builds kind of slowed down and the parts builds, that was the direction I wanted to go. Started learning. It's like, wow, Ed had some really unique stuff, and you just couldn't really get it from a whole lot of people. So rather than go, let's build Strat and Telly bodies, let's go after this. And because there wasn't a whole lot of people out there at the time, I think there was a couple other companies that were doing it. So it's like, hey, the
not even well.
Low. Mm-hmm. And then that's just kind of where it went. And,
that's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah, Donnie, I'm going to ask you the same questions. How did you start? What made you decide to? I know you're a guitar player. I know you're both good guitar players. And what made you start to want to build?
It's pretty much the same story, though I was much younger, and it wasn't necessarily. I mean, going back to the very beginning of Chris's story, I want a guitar. I can't afford that guitar, in my case, because I was 15 years old. So how am I going to get it? Buy the neck, buy the body, bring the cost down that way. So very early on, I was, buying parts from the same, manufacturers that, we were talking about, that Chris came in to kind of saturate the market, because there wasn't enough people building. Those same people that he was competing with back then are the people I was buying from. So, and myself being a Van Halen fan, that's where I went immediately. I mean, I was already a big Van Halen fan before I started this stuff. So that was really the path that I went down, was trying to get these, the Frankenstrat replica, the 5150 replica, that stuff. So I would buy the parts, paint everything, put it together, and eventually, you want to cut out the middleman. You want to do it yourself. You want to go out to your shop and make it yourself. Some people just have that drive, I suppose, and other people want to, will just buy it because they don't have the time. Myself being young and ambitious, I guess I went down that path instead of just going to a guy to buy something. But anyway, yeah, quite a similar story. I was also very much into vintage Fender, and I still have a lot of that in what I do. Like just picking apart every last detail of pre-CBS and CBS era Fender and all that stuff. And I think that's like why Chris and I have slotted in this field very well, is because we like to get hyper focused on those details that maybe you can't even see or people can't even appreciate, but knowing that they're there is it's a fun task to chase those sort of things. So I guess my point is I'm constantly chasing those details, searching for things that you and I don't even know about on some of these guitars, finding it, discovering it, learning it, and then duplicating it. So it's pretty much just the fun of chasing that stuff, and the fact that it's been able to turn into a business like it has is just a benefit for me. It's a side effect of the whole thing.
Right. Real quick, I want to give a special shout out. Pariah Pickups is in the chat. How you doing, Chris? Sorry about that. Sean Christopher, I believe. How you doing? Welcome to the show. The 5150 show is here to say hello. John Marks is here. We have more people coming in as we speak. We'll say hello.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got 5150 show. Andrew himself here. Great to see you, my friend. And I'm not going to say, maybe a Pasadena Black into a lock body with some strings running up one of Don's necks. I'm not saying it's a tonal superiority, but just saying.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite pickup is that Pasadena Black. I've got that in a few guitars. I need to try some of his other stuff too. Like I'm sure he makes a great PAF for like a Les Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a 57 Black Beauty.
These pickups back here in this Strat in the corner are Sean's.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool guitar. That guitar I'd like to see more of.
The Women in Love Strat.
Yep. Rob Johnson needs that. He needs to have that build next.
Yeah.
Yep, I know.
I built him one of the Rude necks, and this is also a Dan Electro neck, so maybe we can get together.
Yeah. I'm sure Rob Johnson is staring that guitar down right now because he doesn't have that one in his collection.
Not yet, right?
Not yet.
Yeah,
after tonight, trust me. After tonight, he's going to call each one of you and say, "Hey, can you make me one of these?" So
I think when Rob sees something that he hasn't seen before, he turns into that character from the Chappelle Show. Y'all got any of them older bodies kicking around? Just saying.
So funny. He's in the chat right now. He's like, "Yep, I need one."
You can't have mine, but we'll hook you up.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. Why don't we take a look? First of all, tell us about the way you went about researching what you did for the guitar and all the upgrades, all the challenges, and all the aha moments in making this body and neck. We'll start, Chris.
Well, I mean, I've been making a 5150 body for many years now, and it's like the scab you keep picking at, because every time you look at a photo of the guitar, it changes, and it was just it's really really annoying. And there's been several iterations of the body, and this last time, it was like, you know what? Let's just go to the source. Let's get some vintage Pacer specials and let's just dissect them and see what we can come up with. And
I think that's the genius right there, is buying a 1982 Pacer special and literally go over it with a fine-tuned comb.
Yep.
So if you notice, there's two of them back there.
Yeah, I see it.
There's more coming too.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? I appreciate the guys that are extraordinarily passionate about this guitar. It it's I hate to say bad things, but they're annoying. It's like, guys, I'm trying here, man. I'm really trying, and I think that it was some motivation to get us to where we are right now, with spending a lot of money on some vintage gear just to basically see what it started with, what it ended up with, and you know, we're finding it's a bit of a unique bird. It's not a box stock guitar. They're all different. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. They're all different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, they were every one of them you got back in 82, 83. You could have 4 or 5 of them, and the body shape is slightly different on every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The contours are slightly different on every one of them. Dare I say, even the neck pocket is different on every one of them. Everything is different, you know, and some of them really bad, but a lot of them really good.
But fortunately, we have technology now where we can 3D scan these things and bring them into a virtual world and manipulate them. And Don's an expert at this. So, you know, I get on the model, and he then he's able to manipulate the model in a way to match camera perspective, camera angle, and eliminate all of the guesswork. And we're able to take a wireframe and basically try and match it up the best way we can based on our 3D scans of what we got. And then we make tweaks where needed because it is different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to shout out, we got Alan Garber in the chat here. And he's like, Don's purchase of a real 75 Destroyer was one for the ages. What a great result, as David can attest.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's mine right there. And that's made by Donnie himself. If anyone wants a Destroyer, like a 75 Destroyer, look out this next year. You might be able to find 1 or 2 available in the coming year. Maybe.
Hopefully.
It's on my I want list.
Oh yeah, everyone's got to have one. I mean, that guitar it's crazy. It's a little heavy, but my God, the sound that guitar produces, one of the best sounding guitars and feeling guitars that I own. It's great. Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate it.
Of course, I really enjoyed working on it with you.
Oh yeah, it was a good time, and it didn't take very long. It was like a 3-month build. You worked pretty fast on that.
Yeah, and as you probably remember, I'm not a finisher. I'm not a guy who can spray all day and get pro results. I can, but it takes me longer than it should, and that was like the longest. If I can sit down and bang out woodworking all day, I'm as quick as can be. But when I gotta, like, even fretting and stuff, I mean, I can do a great fret job and I do it all day, but if I can just, like what Chris and I are doing now, and we'll talk about more, if I can just bang out the necks and sand everything and get it to someone else to fret, then I'm like as quick as you can imagine. But that's kind of why it was 3 months instead of 1 month.
Yeah. Well, I thought 3 months, you know, when you got to wait 3 months to get a neck from Musicraft,
right,
to get a whole guitar in 3 months, that's impressive.
Right.
It's impressive.
That's quick.
Yeah. And let's talk about fretwork real quick. Chris Locke's fretwork is amazing. He's made several necks for me. I've never had a high fret. I've never had a fret pop out. I've never had to do a level and polishing on his frets. You get them from these other places, and granted, they're bigger. They maybe have a bigger clientele, and they make more necks in a shorter period of time. You always have to have fretwork done once you get, you know, a neck from another company, Warmouth or Musicraft or from wherever. There always has to be some sort of fretwork done. Chris's necks and the neck that the fretwork that's on that Destroyer from Donnie, I never had to touch it. I've never had to do any type of fretwork. Their fretwork is killer. So, Chris, you want to tell us how you go about doing the fretwork and how come or what it is that you do that makes it so good?
I would say it's a combination of OCD and the difference between what we do and what Musicraft does. Musicraft, they have so many different options as far as fretboard radius, fret wire type, fret wire material, XYZ. There's a lot of different variables when it goes into the frets. And what we have found is we have a couple choices of fret wire that we call our standard, but we'll do anything. But as far as our standard goes, you begin to understand how the wire is going to bend, how the wire is going to seat, the fret tang, what width to cut the fret slot at, how to prep the fretboard for the fret. And once you become intimate with these standard fret wire, what I like to call it, you can get really, really consistent results after you press the frets in. And then comes to work with making sure they're level without actually having to level the frets. So go through thoroughly with the fret rocker, the not straight edge to make sure the neck's perfectly straight before you even start messing with the frets. And just going through and making sure everything is perfect to one another, and then polish them up, send them out.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's awesome.
And
I think it's just that, I'm going to say it, that set of eyes, attention to detail, as opposed to multiple people that can have a good day and a bad day. And if you're working for a paycheck as opposed to working for a passion, a little bit can slide. I'm not saying, any other companies are bad in any way, but definitely I know when you deal with someone who is passionate about what they're doing, the results you can always feel the results.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little more personalized when there's one set of hands touching your instrument than if there's a few sets of hands. We got questions. Michael Collins wants to know, if you do a PV style neck with a scoop, would you be able to do that?
Yes, but we'll have to talk about that because, like with anything, I had to clear out the whole shop and bang out 15, 51, 50 necks. It's all about managing our time. We're just two guys, but we do have that in the repertoire. We have measured original PV necks, angled headstock with the scoop. Those in particular, the challenge is the material, because those were bird's eye maple, and that angled headstock means you got to have a really thick, meaty slab of bird's eye, and good luck even finding standard thickness bird's eye today. I mean, we can't even get our hands on this stuff a lot of the time. So finding a nice thick piece, not only is it prohibitive to find, it's prohibitive in cost. It would be a $600 or $700 neck if we're paying out the wazoo what these guys want us to pay for these thick blanks.
Well, you got to think. I mean, if you're making that neck and it's $600 and $700, you know that if you find an original one, it's going to be over $1,000.
Right.
So you're still ahead of the game, and I believe that your neck is as good or better than the original PV. The proof is in the pudding. Michael also asks, do you guys do a 2¼ inch heel like a Charvel style neck?
Yep.
Nice.
Awesome.
We really, when it comes to necks, typically what we do is we focus in on replicating something in particular. If that neck is supposed to have a 2¼ inch heel, we'll model it with a 2¼ inch heel. If you then want to come in and say, but wait a second, I want this particular model in a fender style heel, we can work with you on that. And then, depending on which specs you might want, we might change a couple things and it becomes its own, one-off for you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, all those details that might vary for fit and wood choice and fret size, we're always open to doing custom stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chris, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. How many bodies have I bought from you between me and Nick? How many bodies have we bought from you? The proof is in the pudding. You are absolutely the top of the heap when it comes to this. Now, the new body that's coming out in the new neck, I think the game, you've won the game. I don't think, because I've seen a photo of this already, and we're going to take a look at a couple necks in just a minute. I think this is it. I don't think there's anything left to do to this guitar except paint it and build it. I really think that you've done it. It's pretty amazing.
That's the goal.
I mean, every time a new one comes out, we say we did it. But I think in this particular case, we had authentic guitars in hand versus working off photos and known measurements. It's something completely different when you have the actual vintage guitar in your hand and you're working from that and tweaking that instead of goofy camera angles. And but yeah, I would like to agree that I think we did it. But there's no way to ever put a 100% done stamp because I don't have Ed's guitar to 3D stamp. So let's call it 99.
Yeah, I mean, that guitar is never going to leave 5150. I hear rumblings of a replica that's going to be coming out between EVH, Fender, and Gibson. It's going to be a conglomeration. It's just a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but I hear rumblings that there's going to be another $25,000 Eddie Van Halen like 5150 guitar. So I just don't see. I mean, once that, you're going to know that original guitar is going to have to go to EVH for a minute anyway for them to see.
And then they get to decide what iteration they want to do, right?
Right. At that point, we'll probably know exactly what the body wood is. Let's talk about that. Do you guys have any speculation? Well, we all have speculation. But do you guys have any inside thought of what the body wood really is to that?
Swamp Ash.
Swamp Ash.
Yeah. Yeah, all day long.
Okay.
For me, it's as simple as, and I know a lot of people say they can recreate this in other woods, such as basswood, but that forearm grain that you can see, and if you pay really close attention, you can even see it in live shots from 83, 84. If you get just the right angle, the stage lights will show you that forearm grain, and the up-close pictures that are, as I just missed, those pictures where you can see that forearm grain. The way that paint is sunken into the grain and you can see the little sinew between the lines is something that you will not find on any species but ash. And given that it looks like an ash through the paint, in conjunction with the stories that it's a light guitar, therefore we come up with Swamp Ash. And I don't really see, although basswood can be light, I don't see basswood ever exhibiting that grain, period, in any circumstance.
Okay, so I'm not going to argue the fact, but I am going to say, and I'm not going to mention any names, but someone super duper close to Eddie, someone that has had that guitar in his hands several times, a guy that knows wood has told me that that it's basswood.
I know who you're talking about, and I've heard the same, and he's a trustworthy guy. For me, it's just really tough because of that forearm grain. Now, I could be missing something. There could be special basswood that I've never seen before that has that type of open poured grain. I'm not talking about like ways in the grain. I'm talking about a chasm where the paint can go in. I've never seen that on any wood but ash in the way we see it on the 5150's forearm. Now, the people, as you know, the guy who painted the original, or who purportedly painted the original, says Swamp Ash, and says that, he did a batch of 6, 3 of them were ash, 3 of them were basswood, or whatever he said. So there's so many conflicting stories that I think with this replica series, if it happens, and the forensic samples that were allegedly done, that's how we got to put this to rest. So I'm hopeful that does put it to rest, because it's just tough.
Jimmy asks if I'm talking about a specific person. That's one of them, but that's not who I'm talking about. I don't like to mention names. That some of these guys don't want their names mentioned, so forgive me. I know
unless they've spoken about it publicly or something like that. That's kind of different.
So,
wow, we got quite the crowd in here. The Chad's here. I saw Tabininin 1 is here. my brother from the East Coast. Great to see you
Hey
in here.
guys.
He was asking, and I figured you guys would know because you're shaping necks and such. Is it true that the Ernie Ball Music Man and the 5150 have the same neck shape?
Yes. They 3D scanned it the same way we're 3D scanning stuff and use that to drive their CNC machines.
All right, so you've taken an Ernie Ball, scanned it, and made your 5150 neck out of an Ernie Ball neck. I
personally have not had access to a genuine Ernie Ball neck. I've had access to the X. And everything everything I know about those guitars and the carve size, and furthermore, I mean, lots of people have scanned Ernie Ball necks and they've used that to inform their 5150 carve. That we've just kind of gone with a conglomerate of what they've come up with and what we understand about the neck. And the second I get my hands on a real Ernie Ball, I'll double check it, and if I have to make adjustments, I will. But at that point, it's coming down to the fine sanding you're doing on the neck after the CNC carves it anyway. So, I mean, I'm pretty confident in the carve itself. If we have to make adjustments, we will. We always will. But yeah, I think we've got it.
I've owned several real EVHs, Music Mans, and now I own an EX.
Mm-hmm.
And my particular EX feels exactly like a real Eddie Van Halen.
Good to know.
So if you need another one, I can send you mine to compare to yours.
Okay.
But like I said, I've owned quite a few, and each guitar, some of them have slightly thinner asymmetrical necks, some of them slightly fatter. They were all different. They're not exactly the same.
Right.
So you can have 10 of them. And which one do you choose? You just choose the best one that you like.
Yeah.
Because they're all slightly different.
I mean, in this batch of 10 5150s we just did, they're all CNC'd, and depending on the sanding, they'll feel a little bit different. Now, we shoot for everything to go exactly like we plan and to sand it the exact same way every time, so they're the same, but you never know because sometimes a piece of wood is a little fluffy and you got to sand it a bit more, so that might change the shape a bit. So it's wood we're dealing with. We get as close as we possibly can, but there's always that factor.
Yeah. That being said, if my neck is slightly thinner than the rest, that's fine with me. Hint, hint.
Okay. I might take it back there to the shop tonight.
We have another question or two in here. Hang on. Let me see if I can shoot back. Ben, you have anything you want to ask while I'm looking for questions?
I've just probably ghost built about 15 guitars in my head since the live show started. Various iterations of guitars, we'll say. I'm just going to throw it out there, Chris. Currently, how many different bodies are you doing? Just in case everyone's not looking for a 5150. I know that's the primary of the show. However,
I would say, 20 plus different bodies, shapes, and iterations. Fortunately, with the launch of the store back up January 1st, everyone's been hitting up the 5150 and the Frankie kits.
Sure.
So those have really been the hot ticket item. But yeah, I mean, it's, if someone comes to me with, requests, we can try to accommodate if possible, but I guess it just depends.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. I dig that. How you doing over there, Dave? You look like you're doing long division in your head.
I'm looking for this. It was a wood question, and it had to do with I think it was Keith Campbell that asked this question. I'm looking for it right now. Just give me 1 second.
Well, while you're looking for that, Rob asks for Chris, when's the last time you did a Kramer double neck guitar like you did for him 4 years ago?
I would say three years ago was the last time I did one. Yeah.
A rare beast. Well, that is a unique guitar, and
the primary reason behind that is the aluminum Kramer fork neck is basically impossible to get.
It's impossible. Yeah.
And
you have to buy a 70s Kramer neck.
Mm-hmm.
One of those tuning fork headstock ones, and then look for
Right.
you have to kind of make it into a 12 string.
And then the bridge, that was the next hardest thing. There's nothing commercially available today that is what it was. So that's the second linchpin of the build. And the third linchpin is the Rockinger tremolo on the 6-string. So some guys, they opted to go with the Floyd. That's a good get out of jail free card, and it's a better trem anyway. But I have done one with an aluminum Kramer neck and the Rockinger trem, and I forget what bridge it was, but it was something extremely similar to what was used on the 12-string.
Now I think Rob Johnson went with a non-fine tuning gold Floyd Rose on his. I think, if I'm not mistaken. I did find the question. Keith Campbell asks, why are woods becoming so rare now? Is it because of the lack of manpower due to the crude shipping costs?
Simple answer is they're not. Don't listen to the other people out there. They're full of shit, flat out. Wood is not hard to get. Wood takes longer to get in. So if you plan ahead, you never run out. I haven't stopped since the pandemic started. It just takes me a little longer to get wood in. But as far as material shortages, it's all bullshit, man.
The stuff grows out of the ground,
Yeah,
never
you
gonna
just
go
gotta
away.
cultivate it. You gotta
Yeah,
cultivate it.
there's a certain species of wood is harder to get because of invasive species, but like ash is pretty much decimated, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
woods, like you need a Canadian maple tree for a neck. Yeah, we got a few million hectares of it still. There's lots. Trust me.
As far as ash goes, yeah, I mean the ash borer it's wiping out the population, and it's one day gonna be non-existent. But there's a couple, I guess, hybrid species that they're starting to develop that is a close second, I guess. And then there's some other southern species that are kind of similar to swamp ash that are starting to become popular. So we can manage if the species truly does go extinct. We can figure it out. But like Don touched on in the beginning, really thick bird's eye, can't get it. But bird's eye to make like 2-piece necks, yeah, you can get it all day long. No issues.
And that comes down to what manufacturers and lumber mills are willing to cut the stock into. They can get the logs to make it. They just don't find it profitable in today's climate to cut them into thick slabs. So they cut them thinner and get more yield, and that makes them more money. So that's not a material issue. That's a logistical issue.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we came across a supplier that was supplying Ernie Ball with their wood, and he was willing to cut us wood, but he didn't have a whole lot of it. And once he cut what we needed, he was done. He was out because he wasn't going to keep cutting these thick slabs, and his yield is not great for just a couple of guitar necks versus the 2-piece necks, and he can just cut them out all day long, and he's going to sell them like hotcakes.
Yeah,
and that's one of the primary reasons why the beak neck for the Frankie is we have the neck for it, but getting the wood is just a challenge because you need that bird's eye that's thick enough to make a 1-piece neck.
right.
And getting that it's tough, but I mean, I primarily do the 2-piece necks, and I haven't had any issues getting wood to make 2-piece necks.
Yeah, I hear you. Rob Johnson wants me to show this video real quick. I guess for the double neck that you made him. So forgive me for.
So the 12 strings is Shaler Badass, and the 6 is a gold Washburn because it looked like a Rockinger.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
And that guitar is awesome.
Yeah, I've held that guitar. I've held that guitar in my hand.
I think Keith had a question about suppliers. And yeah, we have multiple suppliers. We have to. We can't put all of our eggs in one basket because, supplier A may be out, but supplier B, they have stock. So, it's taken years to develop these relationships with these suppliers, and they know what we expect from the wood. So, yeah, you have to have multiple suppliers in order to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the past year, our primary supplier for bird's eye blanks for two-piece necks they don't do it anymore. They just don't have it in stock. So we already had the other suppliers, but we shifted our focus to them. And like Chris says, we always have to be having an eye out and working with these people because you never know when they're going to stop cutting what we need.
You're right.
Sure.
Hey, I want to give a special shout out hello to Rob Cunningham, our buddy from Didario Planet Waves. How you doing, Rob? Nice to see you tonight.
Mm-hmm. Great to see Robin here.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And thanks, Terry, for putting links to the various things in the chat here.
Absolutely. Terry's putting links to Chris and Donnie, so you can purchase your guitar bodies and necks real easy.
Mm-hmm.
But do it after the show, please.
Well, if you want to open a second tab and keep us playing, that's okay.
Only if you have two
screens. The website works on mobile, man. You can use your phone to order from it. No problem.
There you go. So we have 88 people watching us right now. If you are new to the channel and you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button.
Yes.
And click that bell and hit always. I promise you we will not be a pain in the ass and blow up your phone, but you'll be notified when we have shows like this. So if you like what you see tonight, you're going to like what you see the rest of the year. I really think you will. So thank you for joining us.
Cool stuff in the works.
And please hit the subscribe button.
The Chad says, I'm having a Locke guitar built right now.
Yes, he is. I know all about it.
Nice.
It's very cool, actually. Absolutely. Let's get off the subject. Well, actually, let's not get off the subject real quick. Let's take a look at one of these next, shall we?
Yeah, we can do that. So what I've got lined up is I'll start with the completed necks, and then I'll talk about the blanks a bit. But let me grab the two completed necks.
Sonic 13, hello, welcome. Just got a Locke high def Frankie body and neck today. You guys knocked it out of the park. That's what we like to hear.
So,
hello to Van Foe and Absolute Mayhem. Ooh, look at that.
This is the Kramer spec neck, and we haven't talked much about this yet, but I hope to explain it now. This is, David, this is your Fender spec 7th tuner neck. So we'll talk about the Kramer spec and the Fender spec real quick. It's not a huge difference. When we measured these Kramer necks, and we measured several of them, ESP manufactured Kramer necks from the era, we found that the original heels were seemingly metric and a little bit wider than Fender spec. So you're not going to get this in a Fender body. In order to be as accurate as we can be to the guitar, we want to duplicate that heel, but we recognize that for compatibility, that's probably not good to have as our standard. So we wanted to have an option where you can choose the proprietary Kramer spec heel and the thickness of the neck. It's slightly thicker at the heel than it is, than a Fender neck would be, which is about an inch, usually give or take a couple thou. These are more like 1.04, so a little more over a 32nd thicker at the heel. So those factors we wanted to duplicate and have as an option for the diehards. But generally speaking, for someone who just wants to buy a neck and maybe they want to swap a different neck out of their body or put this neck in a different body, we want them to fit. So that's the difference between the Kramer spec and the Fender spec. And this is the first prototype we made. I fretted it. We'll talk more about the fretting situation. We touched on it in the pre-show, but you can see it's got the plugged tuner holes. This was the original neck, as most people in here probably know, was made from a Strat or a Beak style, depending on who you ask, headstock. And they leveled the edges, glued wood on, plugged the tuner holes, and then cut out this new shape. So they started with the completed neck, modified the headstock, and that's how you get the neck. Because Kramer in-house was not capable of making necks at the time. They subbed all that out to ESP in Japan. So this is our other option. Again, this is the fender spec. So it's just a little bit thinner at the heel, nothing you can see. We'll touch on this too. You guys probably know Chris does these excellent blind fret slots where the slots don't come out the edge of the neck. So when you put the frets in, you can't see the tang. It's a beautiful look. So we do that. That's standard on all of our necks. But we decided that for the Kramer spec, since we're kind of going all out, we didn't do that. You can see the fret tang on the side because the original was made that way. But we did it on the fender spec because that's kind of, Chris's thing, and it always has been. So that's another difference between the two. So a little bit thinner at the heel, narrower at the heel. And this particular version is the 7th tuner, so it has the additional hole. And I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but right along the glue seam here, where this piece of wood, this wing was glued on, we actually cut a faint crack. It's not a real crack. It's not structural. We're just cutting a little groove into the wood so that when you go over and paint it, you have that 3D effect, the texture to it. And the same thing on the back. And you can see how cringy this is. The edge, this hole so close to the edge, but that's how it was done.
Talk a little bit, Donnie. Talk a little bit about the contours on the backs of the neck, headstock, and at the heel that you and I spoke about.
Right.
That most companies just don't get.
Yeah. So generally speaking, and David, you and I have talked about this on other projects as well. When you look at the back of a headstock and you see the transition into the carve, oftentimes, especially on CNC guitars, it's kind of a hard edge. It just doesn't look right, especially on import guitars, Chinese guitars. It's a really strange hard edge that comes way out. And though that's not quite the case on some of the competition, they don't seem to blend it in quite as well. So if you get it at the right angle, this is blended just really nice all the way up to the tip. And the original kind of had to be, because it was taken from an original, like a completed neck, had this wood glued on and was reshaped. So everything's kind of rounded over more than it might be in a production setting. And further, what David's talking about at the heel, these are quite long heels. For some reason, the heel should end a little further back if it was like true to Fender spec. Yeah, picture this was a 21 fret neck and there wasn't this overhang. On a regular Fender neck, the heel should kind of end, I don't know, about where the 21st fret is. But if you look at this, and if you looked at it in like the 3D model, you would be able to see it more clearly because you can see the wireframe. But the heel kind of ends further along the neck. Therefore, the whole heel is longer, the flat part of the heel. So word on the street is that when Paul Unkert did the mod on the original necks for Ed, he kind of blended this in really nice so that it kind of didn't get in your way when you were going up here to play. It kind of relieves some wood so it's more comfortable. So David gave me some pointers on that. We already kind of had it, we had an idea of how to do it, but David kind of helped us hone in on it. So it's just really nicely blended there. What else? Let me talk about the truss rod, because a lot of people might be looking at this and say, what's going on there? So typically in a one-piece neck, what's going on is you have this is the headstock plug. That's a hole that goes through the neck, and there's an anchor for the truss rod right about here. And if you looked at it from the side, this truss rod is an angled piece, a bent piece of steel that's pre-bent opposite the direction that the truss rod's going to make it move, which is back. And that's so that when you tighten it at this end, it's kind of pulling, like imagine you're holding a piece of string between your fingers and it's kind of sagging. When you pull it at one end, it's going to get straight. So if that happened to the truss rod, in order for the truss rod to straighten out, it's got to move the center of the neck up. And that's how a traditional truss rod works. That's what makes the neck go backwards. So we were making our first necks that way with traditional, single action, simple steel rods. The problem we had is that those truss rods cannot make the neck go up. They can only make it go back. So we had a couple necks back bow with no way of correcting it because they were single action truss rods. So we went back to the drawing board and said, look, I know this is vintage correct to do it this way, but we don't like the idea that people's necks are going to bow backwards because we don't know what's going to happen, particularly because I live in South Florida and my climate is not great for sending out to drier places all over the country. So what we did is we found a way to install a dual action truss rod, which is why it's an Allen adjust there, you see. It's a dual action truss rod that we're installing in this neck in such a way that when this is installed on a body, it is functionally and visually identical to a single action rod. You can't tell the difference because this is all, in the neck pocket. You can't see the difference there. And all of this looks exactly the same. The headstock plug at that point is just decorative. It doesn't do anything, but we obviously put it there to be accurate. So that's one of the things we're quite proud of accomplishing. I think a lot of people have found ways to put dual action truss rods in one piece necks, but never quite in a way that looks so seamless. They either have like a big notch here to get the rod in, or the filler strip itself is wider. So that's another one of the details that a few people have questioned. Why does this run all the way out to the heel? Well, that's the answer. So those are the two completed necks we have. I'm going to go grab the blanks so I can illustrate kind of how this works, because it's quite interesting. I hope you will find.
I've never really noticed that 7th tuning peg hole, how precariously close to the edge that is. I want to know, who was the poor bastard that did that, or was Eddie himself just, screw it right there? Is that Eddie would do that?
Well, in 1990, he dropped his guitar, or rumor has it he threw it at Alex.
Yeah.
And the headstock broke. So
right along the seam.
He loved that neck so much that he just drilled under the hole right where he could for the E string.
Yep.
That's yeah.
And to your question, did someone else do it or did Ed do it? I certainly think Ed did it because it's janky. Like, that's always, whenever you look at his guitars and there's something funky going on, you can probably bet he tried to do it himself, but that's who he was. So these are two blanks, and I kept this one in particular in this early stage to kind of illustrate how it works. You can see this was just a block of wood. And the first thing we do on the 5150, all these holes are just for CNC stuff to, clamp it down and align it on the table. We drill the holes as if it was a Kramer beak style neck, which we 3D scanned several beaks and use that to drive, to inform our decisions on how to draw the 5150 shape. Because thankfully, in some pictures, you can see the seams on the original 5150 neck. So we were able to use our scan of the beak neck to kind of line everything up. So we cut these pockets out and drill the holes, plug the holes with birch dowels, because although I've heard different things, we used to do walnut. I've heard that they were birch. Right now we're doing birch on these for the dowels. That rumor has it that Paul Unkert used birch dowels, maybe walnut. David, you can probably give some info on that.
Yes, it was his grandfather's bedpost, and that was birch.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. So I'm glad we're doing it that way. And that's like I said, that's a new thing. We used to do walnut because we have tons of walnut 3/8" dowel rod anyway for doing the headstock plugs. It's the same.
And it's the same color. It's very similar color. So, walnut is a good substitution if you run out of birch.
Right. Birch is certainly a little lighter, and it gets painted anyway. Who cares? But the main thing is about having this end grain on the headstock. So when you paint it, the paint sinks into that end grain much differently than it does on the face grain. So right. You can actually see it sunken in when the light catches it, and that's a very important aspect to getting these necks right. So drill, plug, cut the pockets, and then we take another one of these blocks of wood, and we can make 5 sets of headstock wings. So this is the wing for this side, this is the wing for this side. And they come out of the the wood side by side. I can make 5 out of one of these pieces. Glue these on, and you can see this one's kind of been machined a little bit. It's got these channels here and there. Those are like alignment features for the truss rod for drilling the hole on this end and the headstock plug on this end. And then at this point, although it looks a little ugly, it's basically a neck blank ready to turn into a 5150, and the result is what we just looked at.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the other comment I want to make about touching back on the truss rod situation, this is 2022. Why do we want to deal with a one-way truss rod when you can have adjustability on both sides?
Right.
So that was one of the other reason why we chose to go with dual action. We understand it's not quite accurate, but the benefit you gain from it far outweighs the inaccuracy of what the adjustment nut looks like.
And that nut is buried down in the hole under the fretboard extension, so you're not going to see it. And furthermore, I will say one of the things we paid close attention to when we made this switch to dual action, and I'll say we only made 5 or 6 necks with single action rods before we realized we were going to have to look at this. It was right when we got together, maybe 2 years ago. So the dual action install we actually install the rod upside down. And the reason we do that is because it allows us to put the hole for the adjustment nut exactly where we want it. So when you look at that fretboard extension from the end of it, that hole that kind of cuts into the extension is exactly where it would be on a normal truss rod. And that's important to us, at least so that, you know, when you see that feature from the end, it doesn't look different. Although the truss rod acts in reverse, who cares? Just turn it the other way, right?
Yeah. Well, I firmly believe, like, when you're making a replica guitar, things that are you need to adjust, things that you need to, that are like behind the scenes, they don't need to be exactly the way it was on the original.
Right.
It needs to work.
First and foremost, it needs to work. It needs to play well, and then everything else is secondary. And
I also believe the same thing with pickups. You don't have to have a custom JB or 59. All you have to have is either a double black pickup or a zebra if you're going for a modern day looking guitar.
Right.
So find your favorite pickup that you like, get it in double black bobbins, and you have your 1983 to 1990 version of the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want a modern day, find a zebra that you like the sound of and put it in there. It's just makes sense to me. You know,
Yep.
Functional stuff needs to be functional.
Yeah, and to touch back on that, because I can hear the competition starting to take sound clips and they're going to run with it as their, you know, hate mail. It's not due to a lack of knowledge on how to install a one-way truss rod. It's just why, when you can have a two-way truss rod.
Mm-hmm.
And on that point, at least when I model everything, and nowadays, Chris certainly models a lot, but nowadays he's sending me data, I'm doing the models, and that's how we're operating. When I model a neck, even if I know we're going to put a dual action truss rod in it, I'm going to model it with a single action rod. I'm going to get the curves exactly right, so the headstock plug is at the right angle, has the right shape, and interacts with the headstock transition, which that's complicated geometry. If anyone's ever, you know, anyone listening has ever tried to like look at the headstock sloping up, this walnut plug's going in at this angle, and that makes a certain shape, right? So we have to duplicate all these surfaces that are interacting with one another such that the final result is the way we want it to look like. It's a lot of guesswork. Anyway, when I'm making a neck, even though I know we're going to put a dual action rod, and it doesn't matter that it has to like functionally work, I'm drawing it so it functionally works with a single action rod. So we know how to do it. We've done it plenty of times before, and I still do it sometimes on my personal guitars. You know, I got this 62-ish Jag replica, you know, slab board style. I got all sorts of CBS era Fender stuff that I build for myself. You know, I did this with a single action rod. I did it the old school way. I love that telly. I keep seeing pictures of it. I did it. I did everything. Said 5 pounds?
It's about 5 pounds. Yeah.
Jeez, that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Chris is right. I mean, people might look at that and say, oh, you did the truss rod wrong. I mean, we've had a couple people point that out. And I suppose we should be more clear about it and say, look, we know, guys, this is a conscious decision to make the guitar work and play better, and we've been very careful to do it in a way that it looks the same. We know all of that. We just, you know, it's 2022.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, it needs to be functional. And a dual action truss rod is a smart move.
Yeah.
Everyone that says they got to have this accurate 5150, look, I have an accurate 5150. No one's going to say, maybe Rob Johnson will say his is a little more accurate than mine, but no one's going to get one more accurate than this one. It has a dual action truss rod in it. So it's okay, guys. It's okay.
Nobody will notice.
Truss rod, you know, and it'll stay, you know, when you have seasons, if you're in the Northeast or wherever you have 4 seasons, you'll be thanking these two for putting a dual action truss rod in it.
Yep.
And actually, that'd be a good segue into the fret slots. Many years ago, I made a conscious decision to cut the blind fret slots in the neck with the matched radius to the fretboard, just because it just looks premium, you know. it takes more work to do the frets, but at the end of the day, you don't have that fret sticking out when the weather changes. It stays pretty consistent, and you know what? It just looks cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's nothing worse than fret sprout in the wintertime, especially if you don't have a climate controlled room that you have your instruments in.
It's Russian roulette by February. You know, you get that midway through winter. By February, come in here, it's Russian roulette. Okay, which one of these this year has decided to sprout its frets? You know, and it's a 20-year-old guitar, and then all of a sudden it decides, oh, this is the year. You know,
right?
Yeah,
I agree. Shout out. We got Cameron Brown in the chat and J7/8, who's looking at that 7th tuner, Dave, and he's just like, well, let's just make her a 7-string.
Well, I'm sure at some point, if enough money is dangled in front of these gentlemen's faces, they can make a 7-tuner, a 7-string 5150 guitar for a specific person.
Yeah, get the narrowest 7-string nut that you can find, right? And so if people are looking at, like, is it blurry? Am I seeing 7 strings? Like, what's going on there? That would be try to keep it as narrow as possible, right? And
you'd have to have a 1 7/8 wide nut in order to accommodate a 7-string.
Yeah. It's you know, I think someone needs to send one of his 7 strings to Chris Locke to make one of those guitars.
There's one right there.
You have one. Okay, well there you go. Yeah, Jay's predominantly an Ibanez player, but he has always threatened that he was going to get a 5150 guitar with 7 strings on it. So
that'd be a cool project.
I think if anyone should have one, it's him.
Absolutely. Jay should have one. So I was gonna say I just lost my train of thought. Chris, I remember in the very beginning when Nick and I were just starting to buy bodies from you, and we said, "Hey, we need you to make this body, but it has bigger horns on it. It's like a Strat body, but it's kind of like fat in the horns, and it's called a Walker body. I don't know, the Kramer ad guitar, you know, blah blah blah." Tell us a little bit about the trials and tribulations on making that guitar from literally nothing. There was really no info on it. There's literally nothing other than the photos of Eddie playing that guitar for, I don't know, 3 months.
Yeah, basically
that's basically all he played it. He played that guitar for about 3 months, and then you never saw it again.
Yeah, it was basically take a photo of the Kramer ad with him holding the guitar and blow up the photo and manipulate it a little bit until perspective everything looked right, and then just trace it, try it, tweak it, and rinse and repeat until you get close enough, and then it's such a weird guitar.
Yeah, it is. It's very cool. I remember the first one I asked you to make us. I think I was myself and oh boy. Well, anyway, there were 2 bodies made, and I think you made them out of northern ash. Not thinking, hey, you should make this out of maple because it's a maple body, and the northern ash. I got to tell you, that's so hard to screw in screws. Oh my God, that's such a hard wood. I mean, that and maple, very very similar in viscosity, should I say? Because you try to screw in a screw, and you break your wrist trying to do it.
Yeah, and really the trick behind it is putting some kind of wax or soap on the threads, and I usually will thread it in like maybe 1 turn and then back it out, thread it in another turn, back it out, and just work my way down. And the quick and dirty way of trying to thread those old school wood Floyd posts into a super dense piece of wood.
Yeah.
What I've done in the past is pretty janky, but I've put a big flat blade screwdriver bit that fits the post, and I put it in my drill press. I don't turn it on. Don't freak out. So I put it in the drill press, and I get the body, get the post in there, and I kind of pull it down, and I hand turn the quill. So I'm getting all this pressure from the quill, and I'm hand turning it to screw it in. And they've gone in pretty well, but it's a little bit of an awkward procedure, I will admit. So I think maybe Chris has the better option for the do-it-yourselfer.
And I mean, I won't lie and say that I haven't put a flathead bit in my drill and just set it right into the body, but that works too. But yeah, I have broken them off in the body as a result. So yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. I know how that is, and boy, that pisses you off. Van Fo, yes, it is Jim. I didn't want to say his name live on the show because you never know. Some people don't like to have their names on here. But yes, you're right. It was my guitar and Jim's guitar, and those were the first two that were made. And then he's had several since then.
Yeah, and Jim, he's like, I want the heaviest piece of ash that you can find. I want it. He's like, dude, this body's like 9 pounds. He's like, I don't care. I love it.
He won't buy a light guitar. Me, on the other hand, unless it's a Frankie, because, you know, the Frankie has to be heavy. It's supposed to be. I don't want a heavy guitar.
David, have you played Nick's Shark that I built for him?
Yes. It's
hands
down the best one I've ever played.
You think? That thing, I think, was like 12 pounds, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was heavy, but that's the best one I've ever played. Rob Johnson owns mine, and I thought that was a good one. Very good, but Nick's is ridiculous.
Yeah, yours was like the second one off the press, and I certainly was kind of, if we're honest, I was still learning at that time a lot of things, and I mean I'm still learning to this day, let's be honest. But yeah, by the time I got to Nick's, I think his was number 8 or something like that. I was a lot more refined.
What I really like about Nick's is you finally got the edges of the neck equal. Where, you know, like on mine, the high E string was kind of close to the edge of the fretboard, and I'm not a big fan of that. I like to have plenty of room on both sides of both E's. But when you got to Nick's, it's like, forget it. It was, and then now with my Destroyer, I dare someone to try to pull an E string off the fretboard. You can't do it.
Yeah. The originals have a lot of room and on the edges, and I'm not exactly sure why my early Shark kits were like that. I know one factor was that the width of the nut. I was getting nuts because I couldn't make nuts out of brass. I can now, but I couldn't back then. I would get pre-cut, pre-slotted nuts and just kind of pop them in. In fact, I couldn't even slot them. I didn't even have a slotting file, so I would just sand the bottom of the nut until it was the right height, and then I would glue it in. And I think the nuts I was getting were wider because I do remember having to file them down. So I think, long story short, I think the nuts I was getting had a wider string spread than they should have. That was one factor. And then perhaps the way I was carving them by hand back then, kind of still, you know, feeling it out, led to that. But yeah, it got corrected pretty quick. I'm glad Rob likes it anyway.
Yeah. He sent me a couple other pictures he'd like me to show for you guys. This is the root. This is the rude neck that Donnie made, and then he's got a 2-inch body that Chris made for the guitar, 2-inch thick. So, yet another guitar made by these two gentlemen, and I've played that guitar as well. It's just ridiculous. It's great.
Those are fun necks for sure. This one, so mine, this guitar, this particular replica probably has the most actual vintage hardware on it of anything I own. This neck is an actual 12-string Dan Electro neck that I bought and modified the headstock. And it's, I mean, you can see the person who owned it before me sanded a lot. So it's kind of like, I should really replace it. But I like the cool factor of having an original Dan Electro neck. These are, you know, vintage Schaller tuners. This is a 1982 non-fine tuning Floyd.
And let me get you singled out here.
Sure.
There you go.
So, no logo, non-fine tuner Floyd, probably Japanese, but it certainly looks the part. That's an actual vintage DiMarzio PAF, and 2-inch thick, genuine mahogany body that cost me a fortune because this stuff is not cheap. And yeah, so this of all my replicas is one that I have the most vintage hardware, and the neck, like I was saying, was made the same exact way Rob's was, except I used a real Dan Electro for mine, where his I made out of poplar.
Let me ask you a question on the block of that tremolo. Does it say Rose on it?
It does not. It's definitely it's plated brass. So that's
Okay.
a brass block. I think what are they called? The Double Eagle or something?
Okay, yeah. So
it's the same block as one of those. So we think it was made in one of those factories, but it's made exactly like the official Fernandez Floyds from the era.
I recently had a real 81 Floyd like that, non-stamped, in amazing condition, and I gave it to Brad Gillis as a birthday gift.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and,
those things are not cheap.
Yeah, he was really appreciative. He, when he got it, he was like, "I can't believe it's in perfect condition." You're part of Night Ranger family now. Anything you ever want, you just call me. It was cool. It was well worth giving him that bridge to have his friendship.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And he'll put it to good use.
Oh, he
Oh
will.
yeah.
He probably
Absolutely.
has the majority of those old.
Probably on a guitar already. Yeah, probably on a guitar. Let's see. What else do we have here? Donnie plays the music on these things. Oh yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Donnie does sound like Eddie when he plays. So it's cool. You should put some more videos out, Donnie.
Appreciate that.
You should. You really should. He's probably one of the better. It's probably one of the better Van Halen style guitar players out there. So check it out. Check out Donnie when he makes videos.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I still got to demo this one. I don't know, it's something from Fair Warning, but I'm working on it.
Very cool. Jimmy Z says he loves Night Ranger, and Brad seems to be a really good guy. Cool story. Actually, I will tell you guys that story at another time because it is a very cool story. It's heartfelt, and Brad Gillis is a super nice guy.
Yep.
He's super busy, and he takes the time for you if you're a friend. If you're not a friend, he's not opposed in making new friends. He's just a good guy. Really good guy. On that note, I will say that Chris Locke recently made me a body, a very accurate body for the Brad Gillis Strat, and that is being built as we speak. So what you guys will all see that when it's done, and Brad also said he's interested in seeing that when it's done. So we'll mention Chris Locke when that's all done and see if we can get some stuff out of Brad for that.
We got Fruitcake Tony in the chat.
Hey, Fruitcake Tony, how are you? You guys and girls, Fruitcake Tony has 2 great shows. Wednesday nights, he's got a show called Halenville, and it is all Van Halen, and it's great. And on Saturdays, he's got a show called Show Me Your Pick. Now, he is a big collector of music memorabilia and guitar picks, and he shows off different signature picks every week. So check out those 2 shows.
Yeah, different band each week, and he never disappoints in stories and showing off some cool stuff. Great supporter of both of our channels as well. So at least we can do is put it back.
John Marks is here, and I will say John Marks is probably one of the best replica builders I've ever seen. And I love Nick, and I love a lot of these guys that build these guitars.
See you, Sean.
I recently saw 2 guitars that John made that Rob Johnson now owns, and oh my God, his eyes, what he sees with his eyes and produces with his hands is ridiculous. And he shops with Chris and Donnie. He also just said, I wonder what I'm going to buy this year from Chris Locke. So, hey, John, nice to finally meet you. And great stuff, brother. Great stuff.
Great.
Well,
guys.
if you turn the commission for Rob, it's probably going to be a replica of that Strat, I see.
Not a lot of painting to do on that one, but yeah.
No, but the guitar. You want to show that real quick, Don?
Yeah, I'll go grab it. So right
Yeah,
now,
you still got to give it the mojo.
right now I have a different bridge on it than it should have. It should have a chromed vintage Mighty Mite bridge, which I own, but I've temporarily put one of my own brass bridges on it. Just this is like the prototype, so I was kind of testing it out on this. This is just a real, genuine Strat body. What we believe this guitar was is Eddie's 1961 Strat that he used prior to buying the Frankenstrat body. After he kind of retired that guitar and went to the Frankenstrat, he revisited this. He sanded it all down. It was sunburst, painted white over the sunburst. Then he sands it down, puts this Danelectro neck on it. Mind you, that guitar donated almost all of its hardware to build the Frankenstrat in 1977. So he rebuilt it with Charvel gear, with a Mighty Mite bridge, with this Charvel single ply white pick guard, and some Mighty Mite pickups, Danelectro neck, shallow tuners. And this guitar was used to do the whole tapped intro to Women in Love and the whole, the pick thing. That part. That part of the beginning of Women in Love was this guitar, probably with these 2 pickups. So I had this body laying around. I started kind of producing these necks and, learning how the Danelectros worked, getting the 5-degree headstock angle, the whole aluminum nut thing. And like learning this, they're actually thinner at the heel than a Strat. So like a Strat would be an inch. These are like 15/16. They're a bit thinner than an inch. So all those little details I learned from measuring the real Danelectro, I incorporated into building these Danelectro replicas, which, an example was the one that you showed that Rob owns on his Rude. And that's kind of how this guitar happened. I love these little like offshoot guitars that not many people know about to have as replicas.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So, but it's a simple, easy build, just a Alder Strat body, no finish, and a couple simple parts, and there you go.
I'm seeing a trend. Eddie really liked those Dano necks, didn't he?
He did. I think we've documented 4. So there's the Coke bottle, that one, and that's the same neck in Eddie's case that went on the Star guitar later. He had it in 1977. I mean, like at the New Year's Eve farewell whiskey gig before they went off on tour, you can see that guitar in the background. Now, I don't think he played it, but it was around at that point with the Danelectro neck. So that neck stuck around for years. We had long thought that neck became the Rude neck, but
that's what I thought, even to this day.
Right. Well, so when the MTV video came out, remember when Eddie died and there was that backstage MTV thing? If you look closely at the footage, there's one point where you can see the Danelectro neck on the wall, and then a different point where you can see the Rude neck on the wall. They were spotted in the same video. So the Danelectro neck's still around, and the Rude neck's different. And looking deeper into it, it couldn't have been the Danelectro just because how quickly this starts to fan out. If you try to make this out of a Coke bottle, there's not enough poplar there before you see the seam. What I think this was a 12-string neck that had a lot of material. The tuner holes were plugged. It was cut down and had the maple wings glued on, and that's how it was made. And another kind of point of evidence for that is that if you look really closely in pictures of the original, the nut seems to be narrower than the neck itself, which is something that was common on a lot of Eddie's guitars because the only spec of Floyd Rose nuts at that time was R2 width, 1 5/8.
That's true. I mean, that's if you look at the beak neck on the Frankenstein, it's clearly a 1 3/4 inch neck, and it has an R2 nut on it because there's plenty of room on both sides. Right. So, and in order to put an R2 nut on that neck, you have to have a lot of shims underneath it because it's not tall enough for a 1 3/4 inch neck.
Right. All those Floyd nuts are different heights. So
you would need at least an R3. An R3 and an R5 are the same tall. They're tall.
Yep.
Same tallness, but the width is a little different. The string spacing is a little different.
Exactly.
And if you look at when on my Charvel, I have a 1 3/4 inch neck on it, and it came with an R5 nut, which had both these strings were right at the edge of the fretboard. I hated that, so I put an R3 nut on it, and there's plenty of room on both sides, and it's the right height. No shims needed.
Right. Yeah. So that was probably the first neck that we dealt with. Whereas it's clearly obvious when you look at pictures, you see that room because there are good pictures of the beak neck out there. But when you start looking closer, tons of Eddie's necks have this because the only spec you could get at the time was what we would call R2. It was probably a little bit different in height and things like that. And they probably varied because they were all hand machined. But the closest modern equivalent to what was going on with those vintage Floyd sets was an R2. So the neck that's currently on the Frankenstrat to this day is a 1 3/4 inch wide neck cut for an R2 shelf with an R2 nut. And to your point about shims, it really matters how it was cut because you can cut it as deep or shallow as you want. So Len Ellsworth, who was making those necks for Eddie, Boogie Bodies, he was close friends with Floyd and actually made a lot of Floyd's templates. They worked together a lot. So when Len is making these necks for Eddie, he knows a Floyd is going on it. He's going to cut the shelf with the nut in hand and get it to the right depth. So a lot of those necks, pretty much all the Boogie Bodies necks that Eddie owned that you see from the era are 1 3/4 wide with a shallower R2 spec shelf. And when we make replicas, we do the same thing.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad you do that because, boy, those necks from 82, like a Charvel neck, they cut them all deep. They, even Kramer's, 85 necks that are R5 nuts, they're cut deep. Yeah. Because back then they just didn't get it. They just cut it and figured, just throw some shims in.
Oh, I mean, there's all sorts of variants we've seen in the necks that Chris has gotten in. We've seen nuts that are wider, or necks that are wider, appear to be cut for a narrower R2 nut, but they're not even deep enough for an R2 nut. They're like, 20, 30 thou shallower than they should be. So the action is going to be way up.
The action's super high in the cowboy cord.
Right. So they didn't really, I think they got these aluminum templates from Floyd Rose because, Kramer and Floyd had that deal. And they didn't really know exactly what was going on. They were just kind of cutting them and getting them out the door. So we take all that stuff to an earlier point and we focus it in to get the details to look right and get the spirit of what is accurate, but we want to make it playable. So we're not going to cut, if we measure a 0.14 inch deep shelf for an R2 nut, we're not going to cut that. We're going to cut 0.17 or about what's going to give you great nut action. Nothing, you can't see the difference. You feel it certainly, and we'd rather you feel the neck playing well than it being technically the right spec.
Right. Well,
the worst thing that you guys could have happen is, like me buying my first neck from you, and where do we spend the majority of our time? Down in that cowboy area quite often. And if that doesn't feel right, I'll probably go somewhere else for my next neck. But if all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, because in your head too, if you're thinking, well, I'm going to expect this, and then it's even better than expecting, you're just, these guys are doing my necks now type thing. I get it.
Yeah. That's generally the first thing that I do when I buy a new guitar is I lower the nut slots because they're never cut low enough.
You can get them just about laying on the fret, and because it's so close to the nut, there's not a lot of room to vibrate. So
I'm sure if this translates at all, but really close.
Yeah.
What I do, I don't know how you do it, but I take it at the third, and then I kind of tap over the first
exactly
fret.
How I do it.
Yeah. And
it should have the tiniest bit of bounce.
You want to hear the little clink when you touch it, and that's it.
That's it. And always go towards the back of the neck. Never cut straight.
Right.
Cut on an angle towards the back of the neck because that helps with the downward angle of the string tension.
And it keeps the peak of the string at the front for intonation purposes.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? What's the shipping time frame for these guitars?
Ballpark, of course.
Bodies are typically running 5 to 6 weeks. Kits, which would be a body and neck, 6 to 7 weeks. That's kind of what we're running right now with the onslaught of orders once we open the store back up. But we're gonna try and maintain that. Again, we're only 2 guys, so we're doing the best we can to keep up with orders, and then making moves with getting material ordered ahead of time, anticipating a next wave. That way, there's never a lull. It's constant production.
Right. Do you guys want to talk about pricing, or do you just want to refer people to your website?
The easiest thing to do is just go to the website, because there's so many different varieties and options that you can choose that affect pricing.
Sure.
We did have to have a bit of a price increase for 2022 just because everything's going up.
You and every other company.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a little bump, and prices typically start at $158, and it just goes up from there depending on configuration, wood. And then there's stuff that we build that aren't on the website. So if there's something that you want and it's not on there, hit us up, and either Don or myself will make it.
Right.
Very cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Very cool.
T. Ricky, thank you so much. Hang on a second.
Thanks, man.
Let's get this up.
And
here.
see, unbelievable.
I enjoy the Thursday night shows. Thanks for doing them. Thank you so
Bri,
much.
the sign guy, was asking what's the website. Terry's 3Gs has been putting it in the chat there, Bri. For us.
That brings me to this. I don't really ask for money. I'm never going to ask for money, but in order to keep this show going, we appreciate all of the super chats that you guys give us, because all the money that you guys send me and Ben goes directly back into the show. It costs money monthly to use the StreamYard application for us to bring the show to you, and any other little bits and pieces go to things that
it covers our bail when we tour.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone that contributes when you do.
Yeah.
Again, it's not something that's mandatory, but we appreciate every penny. So thank you so much. Donnie and Chris, are there anything that you want to plug real quick before we say goodnight?
Other than constant support on the website, www.lockecustomguitars.com. You can hit us up on Instagram at Lock Custom Guitars for me, and at Vestige Guitars for Don. We really appreciate the support. We really are fans of the artist community, and we're just doing the best we can to give you guys the gear that you need to build your ultimate replica.
Awesome. Very well said. Thanks to Chad. Appreciate it very much.
Chad, hang on a second. Let's get you up there. He says, great show tonight. Always wanted to hear from Donnie and Chris. Thanks for all of you too for doing all the U.S. guitar collectors and players. All of us guitar collectors and players. Thanks, Chad. Thank you very much. And we got Thomas Santiago, who says, great show, guys. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate all this. Donnie, any last words?
No, nothing in particular. The only thing I'd add is this show has been primarily about our 5150, but we're doing a lot of revisions. Keep an eye out for the Frankenstrat revisions in particular.
Okay.
Well, we'll be looking forward to them. I've been waiting for stuff like this to have like the ultimate version of either the 5150 and the Frankenstrat. So, I, as you can see, I don't have any striped guitars up on the wall because I only have one at the moment. But I've been waiting for stuff like this to happen so I can build my ultimate version of these guitars. So I thank you both so much for putting in the work and the love and the respect for Eddie Van Halen and his guitars.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree on that. And Alan really wants to see that clear bobbin pickup. I'm just saying, in the Bumblebee.
This one?
Yeah, that's a rare beast right there.
Yes, it is.
Hang on. Let me get this back up here.
Yeah, that looks so cool.
I built this at the end of last year, and I was going for the album cover look, not when he put a Floyd on it later. So it's got the clear bobbin Mighty Mite. And just like with the Rude guitar, I got as much vintage hardware as I could, which in the case of this guitar isn't a lot. But this pickup, as everyone's talking about, is a real 1970s clear bobbin Mighty Mite, and it was given to me by a great friend of mine who's probably in the chat. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Really made this build special. The bridge, I want to talk about this briefly because not a lot of people know this. The original bridge on the B was a 1970s CBS era Fender tremolo with a brass-tipped Mighty Mite arm. And what's different about those tremolos is that they're actually cast steel or cast metal. I don't know the specific metal they were, but they would pour molten metal into a mold, and the block and the plate are one piece of metal. It doesn't screw on. They're one, just like a different trim that we didn't have time to talk about, but a Floyd Rose prototype was made like this. They're one piece of metal, and they chromed the block. Like you can see the chrome on the block. It's awesome. All one piece. So I got a real 1970s CBS trim. The only other vintage piece is the double tab tuners, of course.
Nice.
But this strap, I'm quite happy with. If you look closely at that cover, he has a lap style airplane seatbelt as a guitar strap, and these plates like that attach it to whatever. He just screwed the eye hook in, and on this end it's a strap button. Like he just kind of threw it together for the photo shoot. But what I did for this is I ordered a lap style seatbelt and I cut it down, and I got a family member of mine to help me sew everything back so like this stuff was the right length. And I made these aluminum plates on the CNC to kind of copy what I saw. But it's a great strap. I mean, it adjusts well. Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. The only thing is like it'll dangle down and like hit the body sometimes, but it's just a really cool detail that I don't think a lot of people even know about. So that's
Rob Johnson's gonna want one.
Yeah, he probably will.
Yeah. This is an expensive night for Mr. Johnson. Just saying.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why we aim to please. So yeah, this is. And I want to shout out Legato Misterioso, just because that name is awesome. Legato Misterioso.
That's a good friend of mine.
That wins tonight. That's the winning name.
Yeah, I don't know if you're a guitar fan or a lucha libre. I don't know, but I bet you're from parts unknown, weight unknown, but you have wicked tone. I guarantee it with a name like that. So
Rob says, nah, he's good, but I guarantee
right. We'll see about that.
Next couple weeks, I'll get a text. Dude, look what I got.
That's right.
Exactly. Well, this has been a great time, Dave. I'm glad we did that. And I knew we were going to have a good crowd because I was talking to some buddies the other day and they were like, who do you got coming on? And I told them, they're like, oh, I'm tuning in. And they were here. So it was awesome. I had a great time. I learned a lot. And I knew within 10 minutes, I knew before we even went live, the deep dive that we could go into that I could ask these questions and then just the natural progression of tonight, all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, Eddie really liked those Dano necks. Just really stood out because like a lot of us, we just thought he had a Dano neck.
Yeah.
I thought it was just one. And, he liked the wide, thin necks. He just did.
You know what? His Megazone back there, you see the one I'm working on?
Yeah.
That was a Dan Electro neck. But it's a set neck guitar. Carl Sandoval, who worked on the B and did some stuff for Eddie at Charvel, he built that Megazone, and he didn't know how to make necks, so he would take Dan Electros and modify them. So that's what I did. I made a replica, just like I made for Rob and my own, and I glued it in. I'm doing it legit, but we'll see when I can finally get that one taken care of because I'm a bit busy to be spraying a finish right now.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for doing this tonight. I want to thank everyone in the chat for participating. Mm-hmm. If you are new to this show, again, please hit the subscribe button and hit that bell. Click always. Yeah. If you don't want to click the bell because you think we're going to be a pain in the ass and blow you up, then don't do that. But we won't do it. Please hit the subscribe button. It only helps. It helps us. It helps us get our name out there. It helps us. It helps make it easier for you to find us when you're looking for us. Please help. So we'll see you next Thursday. Chris and Don, hang out for a second. Don't leave. We'll say goodbye off air. Ben, as always, fantastic. Great working with you.
Always a pleasure, David.
Oh, yeah. Everyone in the chat, thanks again. Thanks.
Shout out to the Mod Squad for helping us moderate. Terry with all the links and such. Thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Again, everybody that donated tonight, thank you very much. And all you returning cats. And we'll see y'all next week. Guitar Town Hall. Right
That's
here
right.
on the YouTubes.
All right, everybody. See you later.